Going live. Yep, we're live.
Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, it is such a privilege to be able to hang out with you. It is us, the House of Common, and this is the House of Common show, the flagship show of the House of Common network. We're all in the house. All 10 of us are here. Reem is in the building.
Yeah.
Yes. Shout out to the homie. Reem, how you doing, man? How you doing?
Doing all right, man. Been a little tired trying to keep up with school, ministry, family, and all of what's going on with COVID, but I'm happy to be here tonight with the fellas.
Oh man, it's good. It's good to have all 10 of us back in the house, and it's good to have you, the viewer, the listener, back with us tonight as well. The viewer, obviously, if you're on YouTube, you know the vibes. You've searched this out, House of Common Show, and here you are. You're a listener on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We're thankful that you wanted to be listening to us. We have a great show for you tonight. Before we get to the main event, really quickly, we're going to get through a couple of rundown stuff. Gentlemen, here's what's been going on in the world around us for the past 7 days since we hung out. Are you familiar with the name Tim Tebow? Remember Tim Tebow?
Yeah. Tim Tebow
Played college in Florida, quarterback. Everybody loved him. He represented Jesus on the field. He was literally facing the Giants in real life. Remember that movie, Facing the Giants?
Oh
Right?
my goodness.
Well, remember how he went on the field in the NFL and it didn't really pan out really well, and then he somehow was able to get space to play with the New York Mets, and that didn't go really well. Well, guess what? Tebow time might be back. You might have heard this week that Tim Tebow got the opportunity to possibly be signed on a practice squad for the Jacksonville Jaguars because his former coach, Urban Meyer, is now the coach of that team. Him going there now takes away a possible roster spot from somebody who actually earned a spot because he's playing a position that he never played before. That position is tight end. He was a quarterback, but because he's Tim Tebow, he gets this opportunity. Gentlemen,
Yeah,
the question is
big deal.
this. Just how,
And I
how do
was
you feel?
concerned.
Wait, what was that?
Yeah, so I kind of put this in the chat earlier, guys. I was concerned because the guy is 33 playing tight end. All right. So he has to block, he has to run, he has to catch, got a lot of things to go through to be
But God's on his
successful.
side. God's on his side.
Yeah, God and Father Time.
I don't think Father Time's on his side. That's the problem.
Any other
Father God
thoughts?
versus Father Time.
I
think that,
it is what it is, right?
Tebow. Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
No, I'm just saying, give the boy the shot. It is what it is. You knew that the only reason he got it was because of who was the coach. He wouldn't get this for any other NFL team. So if they want to try him out, hey, all the power. If we all had the chance to join the NFL, I think we'd all take it. So, so whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah, I think I'm the same with Andrew. He got the chance because Urban Meyer's the head coach. They already have like 4 or 5 other tight ends that are probably better than Tebow, younger. I think it's a one of two things. It's the marketing opportunity. His jersey is gonna sell. People are gonna buy the number 15 Tebow jersey, and I think it's probably gonna lead. You're gonna find out he's not gonna make the 53-man roster. Because
Exactly.
right now there's 90 people on a roster in the NFL right now, but as it gets closer, the season gets cut down to 53. I don't think he's gonna make the 53-man roster, but I'm pretty sure you'll find out that he's like a special assistant to Urban Meyer, like he's on the coaching staff somewhere, because everybody needs a little Tebow in their life. So then just remember, Tim Tebow beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in a playoff game. Sorry, Jason.
Cold, man. You know Jason's a fan of the Steelers, man. That's cold, bro.
Listen, I got a bit of a theory on this. Little conspiracy going on. I think
Oh, you're a
When the-
conspiracy theorist now.
no.
Allegedly.
You need to get the X-Files.
Allegedly.
music
I'll
right.
let you. Yeah. I think the NFL lost a whole bunch of people when the NFL started talking about the Black Lives Matter stuff and siding with the whole racial injustice thing after Colin Kaepernick in 2020. And so now they're trying to get that conservative crowd back. That's just my theory. Because you know how Tebow brings the Christians, man.
That's
Brought to you by the Catalyst Conference.
Wow.
That's definitely his demographic.
Wow. My thoughts,
I don't know if they go ahead.
my thoughts on it's actually not on Tebow. It's more on, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are actually making a genius move allowing him to be there. I do think that they're in a situation right now where they haven't been able to produce in the way that people were hoping that they were going to produce over the past few years. People beginning to lose interest in them. Yes, they brought in Urban Meyer and they got, the #1 pick and all that, but they're basically just trying to do everything in their power to be able to put attention to this franchise. And bringing in Tebow, I actually don't think he's going to make the team. Like what was already said, I don't think he's going to make the team, but he's definitely going to bring a lot of attention to the team. And people are now going to look. Now the issue that they're going to have to make sure that they do is that now that people are watching, they have to produce. And so that's on Urban Meyer and the rest of the gang over there with the Jaguars.
Well, here's one more thing, guys, for the rundown before we get ready for the main event. I put a question on my Facebook page. I haven't used Facebook a lot, but I'm inspired by people like Stephon Leroy Watson, who asks for more often than not, at least once a week, he doesn't ask 5 questions. He makes 5 statements. He is one of the reasons probably why Facebook is as popular as is. Stephon Leroy Watson, aka Hot Take.
Put that on me,
House
fam.
Common Show.
Don't put that
Hot
on
Take, who also moonlights on other churches' chat rooms, but that's a whole other story.
Me. The man them don't need to know that.
Listen, hey, apparently you're man them too. Anyhow, I put a question on my Facebook page the other day about albums, and the question was, what album would you listen to? Can you listen to front to back without skipping? So, gentlemen, I asked that question to you. It might take a couple of seconds to think about. Some of you might have an answer off the top of your head, but a real easy answer for you. What's an album that you can listen to front to back, no skips?
Israel and New Breed. Oh, okay, fine.
Oh, you just took you're gonna take the one that I was gonna take, Steph.
Go ahead.
Live in South Africa. That one's fire. That's
that
fire.
is also a absolute banger.
I can go. Okay, I got one. Johnny
that?
McClurkin live in London.
Oh, these are all gospel
that's a good
albums. Aren't they?
Sorry.
I'm reevaluating my
For our
choices.
listeners and for our viewers, if you want to bother Calvin, just list off gospel artists, and you will see he will start to grow hair. That's how angry he'll get. Just so you know.
No, but for real, the Fuji the score, that's easy. It's not even a joke. All the little interludes, all the little skits, like Burger King, have it your way. Yo,
I could do the first 3 Kanye albums too. 4 actually, the first 4 Kanye albums.
I could do.
Kanye before gospel.
I could do. I could do Bon Iver 22 over a million back to back.
Bon Iver, wow.
Yeah, man, that is a masterpiece of musicality.
Stevie Wonder's greatest hits to this CD.
For double discs? Oh man,
Double disc.
I'm surprised no one said Thriller or Writing on the Wall.
Thriller, yeah.
The whole album of Thriller though.
No, you mean get off the wall. Off the wall, just off the wall, not writing on the wall.
Yeah, off the wall.
Off the wall, just off the wall.
I would go Odd Soul by Mute Math.
Oh,
Masterpiece.
yo, Tim, I'm down with that.
Mute math is crazy. Real talk.
Tim, that's a serious one. Yes.
Jonesy, I haven't heard you say anything. I'm surprised that Jonesy, you haven't said your own album. I see the Lord.
I
see that.
I
see the Lord.
Fred Hammond Inner Court. I would do.
You're wrong.
Or Israel Houghton, Deeper Level.
If you're talking about Fred, Fred Hammond, it's Purpose by Design.
Purpose by
No.
Purpose by
The
Design
third
was
one,
amazing.
the one where he's sitting on the brick wall.
Oh, was that Pages of
Oh,
Life?
Pages of
Pages
Life,
of
Volume 2.
Yeah, Pages of Life is
Pages of
nice.
Life 2. That's the one.
Listen,
That's the
all
one.
good.
I agree
All
with Chase.
good.
What about
Go grab your shoes and come on.
What about Kirk Franklin?
Go get your word and
Rebirth?
come on.
Right.
What about the rebirth of Kirk Franklin? Because I could do that anytime. when the
Ooh.
Rebirth. That was such a
Hosanna.
solid album.
Yeah. That's a
man.
solid
That
album.
was good.
The 911 with the Bishop. Whew.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm gonna go Israel, it's the first one, New Season.
New season. Oh, that's
New season is
That's
good.
good.
New season
was
is
very
good.
New Season, yo, there's a lifting of the hands. Come on,
Yeah.
hallelujah.
Yeah.
South
Kirk
Africa,
Franklin.
though, is the best.
Osha.
Live in South Africa is
But
the
the level slaps.
Yeah.
Kirk
Kirk Franklin, New Nation.
The overture in South Africa alone.
that was
Bum,
good.
Bum bum ba ba bum. Bum,
Yeah.
bum, ba, ba, bum, ba, ba,
Yeah.
bum, ba, ba, ba,
Overture
ba,
is
bum.
nice.
Whenever
Yeah,
Israel does
Worship You I
to
Live.
worship you
Oh
I
my
live.
God.
Oh man.
Wait, I want everybody who's watching right now, just watch Calvin's face as we talk about gospel music. Just watch his face.
He's so disappointed in us.
He's disappointed and he's lost. He has
I
no
live
clue
to-
who we're talking about. It's amazing.
It's like
There
I'm,
was
I'm just
another one?
thinking right now of when the drums came in for To
Oh.
Worship You I Live.
Ooh.
It's just like
Oh,
glory. Come on.
Alpha and Omega?
Also-
No, listen.
Alpha and
no, I'm not
Omega.
denying.
Alpha and
Oh,
Omega.
Omega is disgusting.
When it comes to Alpha and Omega, that's
Now,
it right.
someone did
No.
say family dinner on the chat online. Family dinner, Snarky Puppy. That one's good too.
That's
Yeah,
very
what's really
Family
good.
dinner.
That's very
Yeah.
good.
Oh, you know what's another one?
also-
Hillsong United. United we stand.
Yes.
Here goes Calvin.
What?
Here goes Calvin. Calvin. You ready now? Calvin, come on.
Now
United we
you're
stand.
United,
Now
Cal.
you're Come on.
United.
United.
Also, Hezekiah
Young and
Walker,
Free,
Family
Young and
Affair, Love for the
That's
Fire.
fire too. Yeah.
Is that the
Family
one that has
Fun
Let's
is
Dance on it?
No, that has Let's Dance at the end.
Come on,
Yeah.
let's
Calvin,
dance.
do you wanna go into a breakout room?
Or Ty Tribbett's version
Yeah,
one
O'Shea, let's-
slaps too. Ty
let's
Tribbett.
bounce.
The first one, what's it called? The Victory one? Yeah.
I got the
Ty
victory.
Tribbett's victory is nasty.
Yeah.
Nasty.
That's
Oh my
fire
gosh.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, he got himself into it was fire. He got himself into fire, but the first album was fire. That's facts. That's facts.
And no
Then
one
he
has said
came
to Pimp
out
a
through the
Butterfly
fire.
is easy listening. Pimp a
What's-
Butterfly to Pimp a Butterfly is easy listening, yo. That's like front to back.
I would prefer Section 80. Section
Okay.
80 is Section 80 is a bop.
Technically, you can listen to Damn front
the
to
Overflow
back
House
and
band.
back to front.
Technically, that's a good album.
Technically, true.
So, Cal, what album would it be for you, Cal?
Solange.
ATLA's Outcast.
That was a classic though.
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh.
I could listen to that album only for the rest of my life. Don't get at
The
me
album
with
I've
that.
been listening to right now, nonstop, literally over on repeat, is The Color in Anything, James Blake. And if you know James Blake, you know. Then you already know.
Then you know.
Then you know.
If you don't know, now you know.
Well, here's what we do know. Here's what we do know. There are a lot of good albums out there, but the one album that you need to be copying is "I See the
See the
Lord"
Lord. Yeah.
by Andrew Jones.
Yeah.
Go on Spotify right
Get
now.
that.
Facts, big facts, big facts.
You know, take care of our homie. Put some money in his pocket, and while you're putting money in his pocket, he's putting praise in your heart. Just go do that. Calvin Forbes, my guy, passing it over to you for the main event.
All right, let's get off of this gospel conversation. The genre, not the the hope of the world.
And we've been canceled officially right there on the
Yeah,
script. There, we've been canceled.
I only know about Byron Cage, and
Oh, that
it wasn't
man.
it wasn't any good. So
Prince of Praise.
He played us, yo. He played us. So we all got excited.
I just remember Clint Brown wasn't black, and that was so confusing to me. As a
Right,
kid.
he's not
That's
black.
gospel. It's like
Yeah,
everything's a
that's
lie.
No.
Everything's a
Clint
lie.
Brown was good though.
If-
Clint Brown
if
was
I've got a
Clint Brown
little
isn't
bit.
black,
I've got
then
a
I don't
little
wanna-
bit in me, but I don't know gospel
So if
music
Clint
like
Brown,
that.
Clint Brown not being black was like that's it.
That was
I'm out
it.
with
It was
gospel.
it was
a
too
bunch of
confusing.
liars.
Yeah. It's like, your introduction to hip hop being iced tea. Or not iced tea, sorry, vanilla
Ice.
This is a mess. Oh my goodness. You guys, I'm discombobulated, everyone. Okay, look, gentlemen, neighbors, we're talking about Japan, the Olympic Games, which has all kinds of controversy around it this year because it didn't happen last year. And we're talking about a nation that at this point is still under 2% of vaccinations. They're in their third shutdown, like third state of emergency, and yet still the Olympic train is rolling and rolling quickly towards Tokyo. And one of the things that everybody's talking about on social media is rule number 50 by the IOC, in that they say there are no demonstrations allowed. And it actually is written this way: no kind of demonstration or political, religious, or racial propaganda is permitted in any Olympic sites, venues, or other areas. Now, a lot of people are confused by this. Well, why not? I know you guys have some ideas, and I know that I have some opinions, but should we use every single platform that is given to us, whether it's athletics or education or art in general, to make public statements, especially when we go outside of the bounds of where we are? And so the big talk right now is Black Lives Matter. We've been hearing that cry for a year now all over our media, but it isn't a cry that is heard as strong, as loud around the world. Now, say what we say about Japan and some of their issues regarding race and the different discrepancies, the different frustrations that people of color and of other nationalities are feeling there. But gentlemen, I want to throw it to you guys. How do you feel at the fact that athletes are not able to use their voice the way that they want to in a foreign nation about something that's happening in their nation? I'm going to throw it to you, Stefan.
Listen, I'm actually in agreement with them. I think that we have these Olympics once every 4 years, 5 because of the pandemic. And we don't need to do that all the time. I think that people people get the message, right? I think that a lot of things are so Americanized that America is always at the forefront of everything, and we see what's happening in the United States of America, and so it sort of reverberates around the world. And so, yeah, like, everybody is watching what America is doing, but I don't think the Olympics are that time. The Olympics are a time for sort of celebration, a time to sort of recognize sport, athletic achievements, and they're not banning people from talking about Black Lives Matter in press conferences and stuff like that. It's just when you're on the podium, nothing like that. And I'm okay with that, because you got to remember too, one thing about the Olympics is that it's like every other sport. It's a business, and so they generate a lot of revenue from sponsors, and they generate a lot of money from their 2 events that they hold. That's it. Only 2 events. You got the Summer Olympics and the Winter Olympics, and they really can't sort of jeopardize that guap. And like I always say, all right, if you follow the money is what drives a lot of things. You got to watch The Wire, follow the money. The money is what is very important. And especially to an event like this, which costs billions to put on, which costs billions for the IOC, you can't jeopardize that. And so, you know what? You can still talk about Black Lives Matter on your social media. You can take, Instagram videos, lives while you're there, and people, you can still get that clout and that recognition. But for 100-meter race, and when you get a medal, just relax, chill out for a minute, and let's celebrate the athletic achievements. That's my thought.
Our friend Andrew is muted, and so while he works on that, yeah, you're muted. We can't hear anything this guy's saying.
Tim, go for it, bro.
Yeah, Tim, go. Oh, Tim's gone too. So just
I'm
for
back.
the audience,
I'm back.
Just for the audience, to let you know, it's not on the field of play official ceremony podium moments. They can still use their views out on interviews. They can still do it. Again, as Stefan said, in social media, they can use their very own personal spaces to do it, just not when the nation is being represented at any given moment.
So, for the IOC, this itself doesn't surprise me for them, because the IOC has a history of putting the celebration of sports above and beyond everything else that they do. For the IOC, for the Olympics, we can name off the Olympics that happened in Beijing, the Olympics that happened in Sochi, just as the run-up to the Russian annexation of Ukraine. We also can go even further back to the Olympics in Berlin in 1936, as we had essentially you had the Nazis announcing their arrival onto the stage, that the Rhine was here and it was strong and it was proud, and there was something about the Aryan race, and the Olympics is our opportunity to show this off. For better or for worse, the Olympics, they would like to say it is all about the sport. And so they don't want anything to detract from it. Keeping in mind as well that China has hosted and will host another Olympics, I do believe, in the next few years. I think in 2 years it's a Winter Olympics in Shanghai. And that itself brings in money. For the IOC, they make all of their money from TV deals. And so what ends up happening is NBC, which is the biggest payer of advertising dollars itself within the United States of America, to the IOC, they live in a country that is still heavily fractured, heavily it's broken as far as the whole approach to the idea of Black Lives Matter. And so they don't want that. They don't want to mess up the bag. And then on top of that, you then have people that are a part of the executive council and the council that exist in countries where they don't necessarily like the idea of people protesting things that might potentially set a fire within the country that they live in. So that itself always creates a level of unease. And then as a fun thing as well, the IOC is based in Switzerland. And if you know anything about Switzerland, you can put your money there and they will not tell anyone a thing about what you do with your money. And some of the lead bidders for the Olympics are of nations that aren't necessarily within the Western framework considered diplomatically kosher, we will use the term.
I wanted to maybe agree a little bit more with stuff. I know like Tim gave a good oral history just now of a lot of the reasonings. No, I'm being dead serious. Like you gave the context, a lot of context. To answer Calvin's question, though, I got to agree a little bit with Stefan. They're not saying that you can't protest at all. They're just saying for those bigger moments, they want to keep it about what's happening at the event, which as a person who's putting on an event, of course you want to keep the attention based on what's actually happening and not offshoots of personal opinions and values. So they're saying if in your own time, when your own press conference, you're allowed to say that. And I do want to also make note of Olympics kind of is a source of great pride for many countries. It's a time where we all come together. It doesn't matter from many different countries all over the world to participate and to be represented. The very nature of the sports is representation and people being able to showcase their athletic ability of the country and to compete. And in a time where we're kind of all over the place with so many things like a pandemic, like with our race relations, like with police brutality, especially out here in the West, you know, it's kind of, I think if it was me, I would like to see something that kind of was talking about some of the more positive things of our society, because we do get a lot of this negative, like we really are horrible people, you know what I mean? Like we get so much of that, like, man, I can't believe this happened, I can't believe all of this happened as well. So I would love to have an event where, you know, we can actually watch the sports. That's actually what we want to do, like watch the sports that it is. And in those press conferences and in those other moments that they've deemed proper, I think that's probably the best place. And also even for the person who is the athlete, probably the best place for them to have a proper chance to do a proper sharing of thoughts and ideas and bringing light to certain issues rather than trying to do a gesture or chanting, all that kind of stuff. So that's my take. Like I agree with Stefan. We need some good moments right now as a collective in the world. You know what I mean?
So, gentlemen, in your estimation, with some of these thoughts, even in the chat, Chris, we can get you to read some of those out in a second. But seeing the different ideas of exercising personal liberties, thinking about national pride and perpetuating nationalism in this arena as we celebrate sport and achievement, but really we're cheering for our countries and against the others. Would stating Black Lives Matter, for example, as the slogan that everyone is really worried about amongst the many other things we could be protesting in the world, would it be a matter of protest, or does it start leaning into propaganda?
So I'll read these comments first and we'll answer the question there, Cal.
Sure.
Nelly, fan of the show, writes this: don't they have to wear country uniforms while they compete anyways? What would the demonstrations be? Benton Gibbons: I mean, I would really see the big statement being made online and in the media not competing. Kamoy says this: it can get super problematic and complex, even for the country hosting. If you see mass protests, I'm all here for the individual doing what they can on their own. And Zach Baker writes this: shouldn't your podium moment be your time? You want to protest something, win first place, and we'll hear anything you want to say into the mic. Fair point. Then Kamoy says this again: mass protests can quite easily turn into a foreign policy issue, as dramatic as that may sound. A lot to consider. Best to have individuals taking stands on their own, i.e. podiums or socials. And then Nelly writes in just came through: why train to represent what you don't believe in? Doesn't the win register as a win for the country instead of just the person? She also puts in an emoji and says this: I don't really watch the Olympics, to be honest. Back to you, Cal.
All right. So again, gentlemen, you had a couple minutes there to think about the question. Would this be a matter of protest, or would it be propaganda?
I think it's a tightrope, depending on which moments, especially like if it's a chanting during an event, especially when there's Black people in the event. I think it becomes a little bit political, where you're trying to make a broader statement and trying to overthrow, I guess, the broadcast a little bit, or at least take away from it. And I think it does negative things to all parties involved, actually. Whereas for it being like a justice cry, I think if there was, especially in the country of Japan, real big outward racism towards Black, and this, I might say an unpopular thing, but I think it's a little bit selfish for Black Lives Matters to be the only chant. I think there are a lot of things going on in the world right now for us to make it solely about Black. And I'm not disparaging or discrediting the validity of what's happening, especially in the Western world. But there are a lot of countries that have a lot of racist issues in them, and other issues in terms of poverty, and even with people disappearing and abuse and all these different things. But to accost an international event to make it about something that affects, I don't know, is it a minority population? I think it is. Like it is in terms of how many Black people who feel and live in a world where they are oppressed and who are being discriminated against. At a global stage like this, there's a place to say these things, but I think it then only becomes political. It only becomes something you're trying to say to steer or overthrow. And I don't know if overthrow sounds harsh, but to kind of detract from the main actual event without any actual things changing. There's nothing is going to change from you shouting Black Lives Matter during the actual Olympics. I think we could take that same energy and that same issue and protest in front of our city halls and start going to different council meetings and start enacting a different change. I think those are more productive things, where I think that will maybe propagate some of the negative things that have been associated with the movement of Black Lives Matters, where all these guys are just detractors, these guys are just troublemakers, and it doesn't allow us to speak pointedly as to what we actually want to do. I'm gonna veer, even though it is a tight one. I think I'm gonna veer that it becomes more political rather than a justice or a mercy cry.
Well, I think I agree with everything Bart said, and I think it switches into propaganda if it's only Black Lives Matter. And I think, and I'm gonna jump into my conspiracy theory bag here for a minute. What the IOC is doing is making it clear this year in this Olympics that we're not going to do this, because as Tim stated earlier, The next Olympics, the Winter Olympics, are in China. And if you've been paying attention to what's been happening in China with the Uyghur Muslims, hope I said that right, with the Uyghur
You did.
Muslims out there, and a lot of some of the injustices that have been happening to them, they don't want that happening at those Olympics because, as someone said earlier, there's a lot of money involved. And so I would tend to lean to propaganda because especially like Bart said, if it's just Black Lives Matter, if you're gonna speak up for a bunch of other things, then then I think it's better. But if it's just Black Lives Matter, yeah, I don't think that I don't see that being a really good thing for social justice in general for all peoples.
All right, so Kareem, I'm going to throw this to you. What would protesting actually achieve on a world stage? You got a couple guys saying that it won't do much or anything at all. What do you think?
So as it relates to something like Black Lives Matter, I don't think it would. I would like to echo kind of what Bart said. I think there's ways that it could be way more effective to be able to address the issue more locally. That's where the thrust needs to be. And I think as on a lot, like if we are speaking to the Black Lives Matter and specifically, I think that's where they've missed the mark. Like I think their course of action, their plans of like how they've executed, how they're gonna try to affect change hasn't necessarily been the most effective. They've been screaming from the mountaintops in various different different situations, but I don't know how effective they have been. And I do think that they need to start stepping back and really think of what is going to be the most effective in really affecting change with this particular issue. On the world stage, to be talking about the things that, because if you look at Black Lives Matter and where it's kind of stemmed from, it's people from originally from the States, and obviously that's the issues that they've been going through. But like to now put it on the world stage, it's not like the people that are around the world are now going to go back to the States and really be able to get the politicians to change whatever policies that are in place that are have been holding back people of color. It's not like the people in the world stage are going to be able to go and say, America, you need to make real change. No, that's not going to happen. And so what needs to happen in terms of protest, it's not on the world stage where it's most effective. It's really, locally, on the grassroots level. That's where real change happens. And you continue to be consistent with that. And over time, as you push, continue to push and affect change locally, that's where, eventually I think where you'll start seeing a real change happen.
Tim talked a little bit about the history of the Olympics and protests, and it's valuable to remember that there were different moments in history, both in 1980 and 1984, where various countries actually didn't go to the Olympics in protest. So I believe it was 1980, it was the Americans and allies of the Americans who didn't go to the Olympic Games. In 1984, it was those under the Soviet regime and communist regime who didn't go. Kind of in a during the midst of the Cold War, and there have been multiple different protests, seen and unseen, known and unknown, that have taken place not only in the midst of the games but on the podiums. There have been moments where I was just reading here where at a different point an Iranian didn't want to wrestle an Israeli. And their decision was because of what's going on in Israel-Palestine, which kind of mirrors a lot what's going on literally right now as we're recording. I'm not going to wrestle in this match. I would rather forfeit. And so on one hand, I do agree. We're talking about Black Lives Matter specifically, but there is no bigger stage. And the thing about protests is if no one ever sees your protest, is it really a protest? If a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, does the tree really fall, sort of thing? And so it's this kind of this balance, because at certain points, if it's a human rights issue, there have been moments where we have learned about things in history because at a major event like the Olympics or an award show or something like that, somebody said something and it caused somebody to say, "Oh my goodness, I didn't know that was going on in the world." So I agree. I think there's merit in both sides. I'm not saying there's good people on both sides. I'm not saying that, but I think there's merit on both sides. That on one end, yeah, like it's just get your medal and go home. But on the other end, remember John Carlos in the 1960s, who stood up and put a black power fist up, um, saying to the world that there is injustice happening towards black people. Remember how there were some countries who weren't going to go to the Olympics because of apartheid in South Africa, and that ultimately over time changed South Africa, as other countries started to say, we're going to pull sponsorships and we're going to pull companies and things like that out of South Africa until their money started going out, and then they said we had to change something. So it all depends on the person and on what it is, I think.
That's fair. That's fair.
You-
Chris, you want to read out some of the thoughts, the questions from our live, and then we're gonna go to let Andrew jump back in before the.
Well,
next
I think Reem wants to retort.
Oh,
It's
Reem-
not a
Reem
retort.
wants
I just have a
backtracker.
question. I have a question for you. Like, do you think that the Black Lives Matter protests would change people's thought? Like, would they essentially, what I want to speak to is the bag. Like, would it really affect the bag? Like, would people really look at that and get, so upset at the situation that that sponsorship and all these different things? I'm not trying to be a pessimist, but for some reason I feel like this specific one, it wouldn't. And
Well, we
really,
also don't have a thing that we want. What do we want?
and what do we want? And so like, and that's what I meant going back to my original thing. What is the plan? Like, they need to have a plan, a course of action of what
There's
are,
no plan.
what do we as people of color want to actually see happen, and actually, ask for those things. I don't know
Yeah,
if I
yeah.
don't know if it would affect the bag, only because it's only if it affects a bag where it will actually affect change on the world stage, in my opinion. So
Yeah, I would disagree with you.
I think it's only if it
Yeah,
affects a
when it
bag.
comes to that.
That's my
When it-
opinion.
Yeah, when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement, not like the movement and the organization and the statement. I think there's been so many things that have happened over the past 365 days leading into the Olympics that at a certain point, and kind of agree with my brother Bart here. It's almost like a clanging cymbal at this point. Like, hey, we get it. Okay, thank you. Right, like when John Carlos and the other man, I can't remember his name, I apologize, stood up and put the black power fist up in 1960 Olympics. Like, that was a moment because they planned it, they had the gloves, they were ready, they were making a statement. Right now, you might have one person who might kneel during the anthem, another person who might turn their back on the anthem, another person who, all in the name of Black Lives Matter, but nobody from Black Lives Matter has organized something to be able to. So
No, but I'm with you. That's what I'm saying. I don't think that it would really affect any real positive change. I just think that it'd be going to what you just said. Like, it's a bunch of people just screaming for no reason, just having a tantrum. Like, that's the effect that it would have, possibly.
I also think, though, to what Chris was saying, that just I think with social media now on such a rise, in those protests in the 1980s and things like that, it was only known through those mediums, the Olympics, world championships, soccer, things like that. Now, because we have, TikTok, we have all these things across the world, the message has been spread across the world. And so now to do it at an Olympics, I don't know if you really need to do it because it's already being spread across the world in so many different mediums. Well, you look at TikTok. TikTok always has something. You look at Twitter. You look at whatever. Anything. YouTube. Whatever. You can see it everywhere. So for them to say, okay, for one event, let's try and slow it down. You can still do it in your press conferences. You can still do whatever. But on the field of play, let's keep it just being the field of play. I don't think that's too much to ask because of the society we're living in now and the mediums that we have to get the message across.
I agree. And Chris, I think my pushback would also be like, have we not had enough of seeing demonstrations over the last year? Can we not have like a moment where we're like, hey, you know what? Let us actually just celebrate someone's achievement, someone's.
You sound like
athletic
you sound
ability.
like Tommy Loren saying, "I just want to watch the Super Bowl with my family. I don't want to see I don't want to see Beyonce to remind me about the Black Panthers."
I can't believe I can't believe that happened. I'm all right. Yeah, no, okay, never thought me and Tom. Dang, man, have I fallen, guys?
Yes, you have.
Yeah,
some-
yeah.
Yes, you have. You
Yes.
are being
Look how the mighty
excommunicated.
have fallen.
So let me say this. I've unmuted myself. The
Welcome to
reason
the conversation, Tim.
the reason that Black Lives Matter, that slogan itself is not being encouraged to be within the field of play within the Olympics is the reality is that Black Lives Matter has become a brand. And so what ends up happening is the Olympics is bankrolled by brands. So if Black Lives Matter was willing to roll up and drop $150 million as an official Olympic sponsor, the IOC would be like, yo, it's like, where do we hang the banner? but the reality is Black Lives Matter as an organization, they have netted so many donations because of the movement. And so the last thing the IOC would want is essentially a guerrilla marketing campaign, even if it isn't wholly organized by BLM. Because then what that is that it encourages other brands to go in and be like, you know what, we're going to send in a couple of guerrilla marketers to represent our brand, and we are going to make bank, and it only costs us pennies on the dollar in comparison to what Coca-Cola, McDonald's, and all these other companies are bringing in. The Olympics will always say they want to glorify sports, but at the end of the day, it's all about the dollars.
Important distinction. He's not talking about gorillas like the animals, guys, right? So, okay, let's talk Jesse Owens. Jason, I know you got something to say about this. Zach said it in the chat a little earlier. Maybe you just need to win, and by you winning, that virtue allows you to speak louder than you being a nobody that nobody ever thinks about ever again, who was an also ran. Is it better to win against the odds and then protest silently, just to say, I have something to say, but I'm going to do it with my feet. I'm going to throw the javelin as far as I can. I'm going to punch as hard. Like, what does that look like? What does that feel like, Jason?
Well, I mean, I kind of dived into just the whole thing with Jesse Owens and, just his moment. And, that guy was in the lion's den. I mean, like, you have pictures of people hailing Hitler, and this guy standing on the podium, with his gold medal saluting. And, for him to win those 4 medals, and he got up there, he proved that he was in that position, and he proved that, okay, I'm an African-American man, I do matter. And that he also proved to Hitler, like, hey, I'm somebody who is important. And so my people who are African descent can actually stand up and do very well. But also on the other hand, because I'm kind of in the middle, I mean, the Olympics, everybody, they come and they represent their city. And yes, you can, excuse me, not city, country. And you can protest silently, but also, there's also that moment. And now the question is somebody willing to pay the price for that moment? Okay. If someone states Black Lives Matter, and I know most of you said, yes, this is a Western thing, but to me, after the whole George Floyd incident, seeing protests from, Blacks, anti-Black racism type protests literally going around the globe, I know the brand is a brand, but also to me, it's bigger than that. It is Black people saying, okay, we matter, we are important. So I'm in the middle on this one.
Yeah. Bart, is being on the stage enough, or should performance dictate influence? Like in, again, that idea of, is being there enough to be able to say whatever it is that you want? Because for the most part, there are hundreds of Olympians, thousands of Olympians that we had never thought of, we will never think about again, that work at Home Hardware, like in our own country, And so, what do you think? Do you think the stage is enough, or do you have to get to the stage? Mark, you're muted, my brother.
You're muted, fam.
Man, we're having some issues today with the mute button. I think it matters enough because you are decorated as an Olympian, and for a while it will do something for you. Let's say you went, but you did not win, you did not place. But I do have to agree that the ultimate protest is proving people wrong and showing up when people are expecting you to buckle. And what that does is solidifies your name in the history books, like Jesse Owens. And what happens is after the fact, those interviews and those interviews at the event and interviews back home, when you get home, you get way more time. And this is, I think, the whole issue that I have with the whole idea of the protests, and people may be chanting Black Lives Matter, all that kind of stuff. It's like there's not a place for you to pointedly say something and encourage people to take action in something. But I think if you win, you are going to be interviewed like crazy after the fact, and you're going to come home a champion, a winner, and you're going to be able to enact more and more change. They're going to be pulling quotes from what you said after you win gold or you play silver in all these different countries around the world. And that, I think, is a great moment, rather than just loud noises like Chase said, loud cymbal crashes and stuff like that. I want to enact real change. And if it's not going to matter in 5 years, it's not worth 5 minutes of my time or my energy. So every word that I say, if I'm not going to be able to help people take a step forward, that I think we're wasting our energy. So I want people to show up and represent their country and have that moment, because a lot of these people dedicate their lives to be there. It has nothing to do about political reasons. They're just there because they gave their whole life to track, or they gave their whole life to the luge, whatever it is. So I don't want to take that away from them. They go there, do your thing, but at the same time, you as a winner, you get, that's part of the spoils. I now matter. I don't think anyone would have cared about Bruce Jenner, right, if he wasn't a winner. So I think being a winner matters in the sense that you now have longevity in your voice meaning something, and that's where you can make a better change.
I'm thinking about it, and I hear what you're saying, Bart. The thing is, to be honest, do people even care about Olympians after the Olympics are over? I don't really think, like, even if they do stand up there and they they might protest. Yeah, they'll get a little bit of shine for a day, but with the way that our world is going, with how quickly the news cycle is changing, right? Like how fast things are going, they just become, oh, that was a thing, it happened, but we're gonna move on.
They're gonna be on the View fam. They're gonna be on CBC.
Right.
They're gonna be on all
But
kinds of stuff afterwards.
okay, how many of us care about Penny Alexiak?
I know, but what I'm saying is they have a brief moment where people are going to pay attention.
I agree with you, but I don't think that it's going to be. I don't think it will be as big as maybe we think it might be, and I think the IOC is probably thinking that it's going to be this big, huge spectacle. But like, I mean, we don't really care about our. We do in Canada to a degree, right? But I don't know, man. I don't think that they'll have that impact. I think it goes back to what Andrew said, is that they'll probably have bigger platforms using social media and using TikTok and things like that, as opposed to having the TV on, or being on TV, especially considering that the Olympics are in Tokyo, and when some events end and the ceremonies are happening, we're probably asleep, and so we won't see it in the moment, and we'll probably see it on the news, like things like that. So I don't even know how big of an impact maybe they'll have, to be honest with you.
I think the impact I think you're right to an extent, Steph, but it's the ability to leverage what they have in that moment is essentially what Bart is saying. So they may not initially have like the impact that I think that you're referencing, but they could leverage that moment to create longer lasting impact through like what Jonesy was talking about with like social media. So in that moment, like any one of us, you know, unless you're Chase or Hosky, nobody really knows, and Jonesy, nobody really knows us, right?
Facts.
Right.
Facts.
In this moment, if we put something out, nobody's really watching it. But if I win the Olympics, in that moment, everybody's watching. And if I leverage that moment in that time, just like I think some of us even leverage being able to be around guys like Chase and Hosky.
Living in the
Thank you
overflow.
so much, Chase.
Yo,
Thank you so
fam,
much.
Chris, thank you so much for putting
guys,
us
by
on.
the way. Thank you guys so much.
Adam, I appreciate you.
Leverage, if they leverage that moment and they actually are strategic in that, yes, it actually gives them the greater impact in the long run. And so I think that's kind of more so what Bart is saying. Like, yeah, you can use that moment once you win. And yes, like we don't really care, but if we care for that moment, that brief moment, and you leverage that the right way and the strategic way, you know, then yeah, for sure.
First off, guys, you're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Hold
Thank
up.
you.
Did you just admit it now?
Yes,
you got
he
this
did.
on record that you
That's
did
why I
admit
said
it.
thank you.
All right, then.
And we have our viewers watching live right now.
Here it is, guys. Shout outs. I just wanted to say this. You know, when we talk about Jesse Owens, and we're going to go quickly into the chat, in some chat comments, then back to Calvin. Thing about Jesse Owens that people we need to remember or need to be reminded of is Jesse Owens. He runs and he jumps and he works with integrity. He's one of 18 African Americans who went to Berlin, who competed in the Olympics, many of them who came back with medals. He was on record later on saying that he was treated better by the Führer, Adolf Hitler, in Germany than he was by white Americans when he went back to America afterwards.
Holy.
After going and competing for his country and not protesting and not making things a big deal, he went back to America and he was running against horses because he couldn't get a job.
Wow. I did not know that.
That's
So
right.
America.
People who would have killed him normally.
You got to cast that history. So you have people who protested against protested for equality for African Americans in the civil rights movement. They were stripped of their medals. They were outcasts. You have Muhammad Ali, who wouldn't go to fight in Vietnam, who was then who lost everything, who threw his Olympic medal in the water afterwards in protest of that. Whether you protest or you don't, canceling can come for you at any point in time if you are naturally just different than the status quo. And that doesn't just happen in America, that happens in Canada, and it happens all over the world. And the problem with the social media part is, yes, you can reach a lot more people. The catch is that you can be canceled that much quicker. And whether you're silent like Jesse and you run with integrity, or whether you protest with integrity, the same thing can happen to you when you go back home. Because as quickly as they remember you when you're on the podium, they will forget you when you're back off the plane. That's just,
Chris,
my 2 cents.
So what you're saying is that Nazis in Germany treated Jesse Owens better
That's what those were
than
his
Americans.
words. If you read through the history, when he comes back home and he's running beside horses on sideshows at carnivals to make money because he can't get a job and he can't leverage the platform that he was given, being a 4-time Olympic gold medalist, coming right before World War II, all those sort of things. Like, that's his history. His history is jaded because of that. So he said like he was treated kinder by the Nazis than by his own people when he came back home. Those are his words, not mine.
All of those athletes, black athletes, weren't recognized until Barack Obama recognized them in 2016. And by then, half of them, a number of them have passed away. All these sort of things you got to remember, right? So,
like they would reference that Jesse Owens didn't shake hands with Hitler, which he didn't, but that's because Hitler didn't shake hands with anybody that was not German. He shook hands with a few Finnish people, but anybody that was not German, he did not shake hands with. So, but people would like to isolate Jesse Owens not shaking hands and saying he was ignored by Hitler. Well, Hitler ignored everybody. So, yes, he was treated.
Now we're not standing up for Hitler here. This is not
a
a pro Hitler show.
We're kind of getting.
We're not doing that.
No. We're out. No.
Ladies and gentlemen,
We gotta
we just
be
want to
careful
make
what
it
we
very
say.
clear that the House of Common show is not sponsored by Nazi Germany or.
Just in case you're wondering. Wondering.
Or the Aryan Nation.
No guerrilla
But
marketing.
what
going
Chris
on here.
was saying is just the fact of he was treated better in a place where in a war we'd be killed and lynched and just as much, but we were treated better there than we were in our own North America.
And historically, I can speak to that quickly. What ended up happening was...
Were you there?
Historically, I can speak to that quickly. In 1936, the whole show of the Olympics in Berlin was to project a facade of the progressiveness of the Reich itself. And so what ends up happening is at this moment they have yet to make the jump. And Hitler at that time, he had his misconceptions about how he thought people would respond to what he was doing. But that itself was something where he would behave a certain way to certain people because all he wanted was good PR. He wanted good press. So that when people went back and talked about their interactions with the Fuhrer, that he was only anything but nice. He was only anything but fair to them.
Yeah, and so I think, again, in all that we've chatted about, that there are greater conversations to be had than should somebody be able to wear a Black Lives Matter shirt. You think about the fact that Jesse Owens was able to represent his country, win for him national pride, and still come home and face the injustice that he did. So maybe they should protest. Maybe they shouldn't. You think about the human trafficking that follows the Olympics everywhere it goes in the world. You look at the economic infrastructure that is destroyed more often than not when an Olympics shows up and leaves decades later. You think about the workers who pass away. Is there no injustice to building these games to make money for a small group of people who, at the end of the day, are all about the business, corruption within the IOC? All these athletes who spend their whole lives, take tons of money invested into them, train, go and compete, and still cannot win because it isn't built for them to. And again, we are all in this together. This global pandemic, thinking about a country, again, with 1% of their nation vaccinated, in another shutdown, another state of emergency, saying, please don't bring this here. The train keeps on moving. I don't know if it's right. I don't know if it's wrong. Are we complicit by watching? Are we complicit by cheering? Do we have other things that we could be putting our attention towards? Or should we be getting behind these athletes who are going to be representing our country so incredibly well and just stay along for the ride that won't stop? Chris, I'm going to pass it over to you. This has been a great segment. Let's hear what the chat has to say.
How does this rule get enforced if an incident occurs, if by any country while the Olympics are underway? That was a question that came from Brandon. Jenna said this, and there might be some truth to this, guys. Ultimately, this is shut up and dribble on a world stage. Zach Baker then retorts, shut up and dribble is what I tell my toilet training toddler. Shouts to Zach for the alliteration of toilet training toddler. Benton says this, in my opinion, social media and interviews will be more impactful. Win, collect your accolades, make a statement, people will hear it. And then Nelly says this, didn't some of those brands, we mentioned the whole thing about brands earlier, post a black square and make BLM statements? Yes, I agree, Nelly. Technically they did, but does that mean enough to sign it onto a global stage like the Olympics? Nope. LOL, it's Kamoy. And then it goes back into comments about how you regulate this. What do you do about dress code? What if somebody wears a Black Lives Matter sweater? Are they not allowed? Do you regulate somebody for what they're wearing before they compete and after they compete? All these sort of things are things that came up within the chat. And then lastly, I'll close off with this. Tim Ballas says, could using your voice inspire others who don't have the same freedoms to do so? So those are some of the comments that came in the chat. If you're listening to this afterwards, feel free to click on the links in this description and email us at Thehocshow, TheHoe show @gmail.com. Email us your comments, email us your thoughts. Leave a comment, a verbal comment on our Anchor account, all that sort of stuff. Let us know what you think about this sort of thing. Should people be able to protest wherever they want at things like the Olympics, or should they try to win a medal and go home and hopefully get on a Wheaties box? A lot to think about, lots to process. It is 11 o'clock. We've hung out with you for the last hour. We know for a fact that you enjoyed it. We will see you again next week, Tuesday at 10 o'clock. This has been the House of Common show, the flagship show, dare I say, of the House of Common Network. We'll see you next time. Cheese.
We're all saying Chase, by the way.